So if Kolosov doesn't show up, which
seems
by all indications
seems likely at this point he's not going to show. At least not for rookie camp.
Do the Flyers need to then do something else to change the story, change the perception? Like, do you think they should then make a trade, have a jersey
Well, I don't
giveaway?
think they can make a trade, really, because they got the Ryan Johansson situation hanging over their heads. I talked about it earlier that their cap situation is a little bit tied up at the moment because they're not quite sure how that's going to play out. Now, granted, as far as I know, they have not officially terminated that deal yet. They have not.
So they don't even have that $4 million.
Yeah, but my guess is that the sides are negotiating. So they probably don't want to be doing anything big in terms of cap because they don't know how that's ultimately going to play out and what kind of cap charge they are going to have on their books with Johansson, because they very much have, like, as far as I know, the NHL gave tacit approval for them to do what they did in terms of putting him on waivers. So they could terminate that deal whenever they want to. So that's out there. I don't think they're going to make a big trade. I guess this is where I do take a little bit of a step back and remember that while I wish our show had 200,000 viewers and listeners on a daily basis, and while I wish that every Flyers fan cared a lot about the status of Alexei Kolosov, he is not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of the perception of the fan base overall. He's just not in the same way that Gauthier was. So I really don't think, like, this seems like the biggest thing in the world to us because we're very much in it. And it also seems like the biggest thing in the world to Twitter because Twitter, generally speaking, cares a lot about prospects. I don't think this is nearly as big of a deal as it may seem to us, to the point where they have to go out and do something huge to change the narrative, because I don't think the narrative is that big anyway.
It's not that Kolosov individually, I think, is the biggest deal. I want him here. I want to see.
Yeah, I want him here too.
The way they talk about him, he might be the best goalie they have if he were to come over.
There's upside
We
there,
might
absolutely.
not find out like this year or halfway through the year unless there's injuries or something, but it's the Flyers. Probably going to be goalie injuries. Something's going to happen. It's not that Kolosov individually is, oh, well, it's over. Rebuild failed. Like, that's not the issue. But having this happen twice in a year does seem like a situation where anyone paying any sort of attention, it's like, what the hell's going on over there?
It's a bad look. It absolutely is a bad look. And
they don't want that.
But my point is that I don't think it is so enormous that they are going to feel the need to play, deflect and distract. I just don't think it is. I don't think in the grand scheme of things, it's that big of a deal.
Do you think so? Then we probably won't get the full propaganda blitz like we did with Cutter?
I would be shocked if we got that. And in large part because, again, I called this a standoff. It's a blinking contest. I think they will still, even if he doesn't show up to camp, they will still have hope that he changes his mind in November and shows up, because no team has signed him in the KHL. Minsk has gone in their own direction in terms of goalies. No other KHL team wants to be bothered with a non-blue chip goalie to have to fight with multiple entities to get him under contract and not have to worry about sanctions and all the other crap. If November rolls around and Kolosov is sick of training and wants to play hockey, they might be like, yeah, maybe October, November rolls around and he gets on a plane and flies over to Allentown. I don't think they are going, like with Gauthier, it was very easy to just go full anti-Gauthier in the media because it was over.
Yeah.
He was no longer in the organization. He was never under contract. He was now, his rights were owned by another organization. They could hit him with both barrels because why not? This Gauthier was a guy that everyone in the fan base knew. He was a 5th overall pick. He was one of the hopes of the rebuild. They needed to go on a PR blitz because everybody in the fan base knew Cutter Gauthier. This is to steal a term from the Eagles podcast, only the sickos really, really care about Alexei Kolosov. It's true. And we're sickos, but he's not a household name in Flyers fan households the same way that Cutter Gauthier was.
While I agree with the premise, the Flyers have been mainstream irrelevant almost a decade now. Is there anyone but sickos?
I think there are a lot more fans than I think you realize.
There are a lot more closet fans, bandwagon fans. Wake me up when September. Wake me up when this team has any chance. Right. Yeah, man, I'll watch the playoffs. I think there's plenty of those people. But I don't know if those are the people spending money on season tickets. I don't know if those are the people buying jerseys right now. Now, they do have the ultimate, maybe because we are so in it, it's hard for me to take a step back and go, those people are buying Michkov jerseys and nothing else matters but him.
Exactly.
Because they have this one blue chip thing, all this other stuff is basically irrelevant, and there are people jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah,
if there are, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Make us part of your routine. I hope you have already. If not, right there at PHLY_Flyers. Maybe that's such a big deal, and
I think it is.
Because
you mentioned the idea.
You've caught me underplaying it, and I'm like, you're right. It is the biggest thing in the world.
Well, you mentioned is there anything that they have to do to change the narrative?
Does a Michigan in the home opener and.
In the first rookie game. Kolosov most likely is not going to show up on Thursday, and I will almost certainly write a story about it, and it will almost certainly be negative. And then the next day, I'm probably going to write a big story on what Michkov did in the rookie game, and which one do you think is going to generate more clicks?
I was going to say, and the read count on those two stories, it will, Michkov will ratio Kolosov.
Yes.
Yes. That will ratio
100%.
And absolutely. So maybe it isn't. It's just man, how is it always the Flyers? I realize other stuff happens, Askarov asks for the trade, and Rucker McGroarty, that whole thing. But I just named two guys in similar situations to two guys, 50% of the things that have happened are fly.
I think
how is this?
So here's something I do want to point out, and I'm probably going to put this in the article I ultimately write on the situation. This is a way that they may, I don't even know if they're going to spin it this way, but you could certainly convince yourself of this. Okay. One of the reasons why I think the Flyers do deserve criticism for both of these things, for the Gauthier thing and the Kolosov thing, and why they are linked, isn't even necessarily that, because we don't know. We truly do not know with Gauthier, and we really don't know with Kolosov either. We don't know if the Flyers actively screwed anything up, or if this is just who these people were. Gauthier maybe has too big of an ego. Kolosov maybe was just homesick, and maybe whatever. Or maybe he's taking advice from the wrong people, or maybe something happened and he just changed his mind. But the reason why I think they deserve some criticism for it is, in the end, Gauthier being a perfect example. If you're going to spin this as Gauthier was disingenuous and Gauthier has a big ego and that's why this happened, it wasn't our fault, it was his fault. It's on you to unearth that in your pre-draft research.
It's fair.
If, this is one of the things you're looking for before you take a guy is, what is his character? Is he trustworthy? Is his word his bond? These sorts of things. And I don't know why Kolosov is doing this. I truly do not. And I don't know why Gauthier did it. But is it possible that these types of things could have been found before they spent Kolosov was a 3rd-round pick. Gauthier was obviously a 5th overall pick. We're not talking about 7th-round picks here.
No.
We're talking about pretty valuable picks.
A 3rd-round goalie is a pretty big investment to make in a goaltender.
It's a pretty big investment. And that is, in a sense, on the Flyers for not recognizing the potential red flag and instead making the pick. On the flip side of that, though, and while obviously Brent Flair is running the drafting and scouting department, so he's still here. Both Kolosov and Gauthier were drafted by the Chuck Fletcher front office. And you could make a case that even if that was a problem, if maybe there wasn't enough pre-draft research being done on character and they weren't finding these red flags, you could make the case that if that was a problem before, this is a new organization and maybe they're doing a better job than the Fletcher organization was. We lost the pick.
Something just
We lost the pennant.
That's very funny. I'm so easily distracted. It's very funny, but
you see where I'm coming from. Here.
Absolutely, you can say, well, that's the previous regime.
That was the previous. These are previous
do.
regime draft picks.
I think some people will buy that. But the sickos will say Brent Flair and the whole scouting department is basically the same.
Which they're not. Brent Flair is. The scouting department, there's been some new scouts, but yeah, they've kept a lot of them. There's a lot of guys whose names, whenever I scroll through that list, have been on that list. The amateur scouting department, I would say, is pretty similar. They've added some, but for the most part, pretty similar.
So that's going to be a tough one to sell. I think, like you said, a lot of people go, oh, yeah, Chuck Fletcher did suck. And, yup. But it's hard to blame that when it's like, this is the Flyers, man. Nobody ever dies here. Like, everyone just lives forever. You walk together forever. That's anyone who's ever been in this organization. Yeah. A lot of them are still here. Like, Danny, was he the GM? No. But he was there. Like, he was in the organization.
Yeah, but he really didn't have much input at all on who they drafted.
No. It's just, but...
And they would argue that the infrastructure of the organization is now more logically structured. They're doing a better job with outreach to prospects. They're checking in on guys more. They beefed up the player development department to make it less likely there will be a situation where someone like Gauthier feels not loved enough or whatever. They're going out. Part of the thing that ticked them off so much was that they sent John LeClair out there to see him, and he refused to talk to him. And that was this, like, awful snub because it's John LeClair. He's a franchise legend, U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer. They would argue that if there was a problem, that problem has been addressed. That's what they would argue.
I certainly hope so.
Like,
Charlie, it was funny when you said, we're probably going to talk about this for like the next 20 minutes. It's now almost 1:40.
It's what people are talking about.
This is the main, like, I have other, like, the other unresolved stuff from, that's what I wanted to do today is, like, the unresolved things from the offseason, or things I'm just like,
where's this going?
I wonder where this is going, because it's something I thought might happen this offseason, but hasn't. And, like, this is the number one. Michkov is here, and now this is the focus. Did you ever think, like... We had this crop of Russian prospects, and we were having issues, like not issues, but like Fedotov, a saga of years, and it involved the military and like God knows what else.
Put out on an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, like God, wild stuff. There's gonna be a book or a mini series or something made about this one day because it's freaking insane. He's here. He's gonna be the backup. Might win the story. Who the hell knows? But, like, resolved. Michkov, 3-year contract. All right, we'll see how this goes. He's freaking here. Alexei Kolosov, 3rd-round pick. He's going to join the Phantoms. He came over. Seems like everything's all right. How is this the drama now? This was the unforeseen one, I feel like. The other two just seemed like such hurdles. And this one was like, he signed his ELC and he came over. Cool. And he's in Belarus. He ain't. We'll see. But
it's
probably
the Flyers.
Like,
nothing can be normal. Nothing can be normal.
I think that's the frustration for me at this point. It's like, how the hell are they ever gonna figure out this rebuild if nonstop nonsense just keeps happening to them? Whether it's their fault or the Russian military's fault, how? How can they ever figure this thing out?
And that is one of the reasonable points that I've seen on Twitter, where while there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, there's things you can say. One of the clearest arguments against this situation and why this is objectively bad for the Flyers is you are in a self-proclaimed rebuild, and 2 of your top 10 prospects you're just gonna lose. How many more can you lose?
And like
before this rebuild just doesn't work. And that's fair. It's a fair question.
And I guess this is more about,
regardless of the reasons, it's a fair question.
This is more about Cutter than Kolosov, but they're grouped together because of different but similar situations.
And it happened within a calendar year.
Yeah, and it all happened at like the same time. Yeah. Like, you had your bottoming out already. Like, even though you didn't do it on purpose, it happened. Mm-hmm. You drafted 5th and 7th. One of those guys is gone.
Well, but one of those guys got turned into Jamie Drysdale.
Into a 6th overall pick from 2020. But since we've seen him and he's been unimpressive, it's like, well, throw that away. Obviously.
Which I would argue is unfair.
It is completely unfair. They've told us he ain't ready. Like, they're like, he is someone we have to redevelop, basically.
True.
We are starting, while not starting from scratch, because he's played a bunch of NHL games. He's had injuries. He's missed a training camp because of a contract negotiation. He was rushed to the NHL. He is a blank slate almost in their minds. Mm-hmm. But since we've seen him, it's like, well, you can't tell me what I saw was not real. I watched it and was like, oh, okay, whatever. Add to this, John Tortorella's like, how the hell is this ever going to work? I just look at this and go, man, if this works, it is going to be a freaking miracle. That's all I'm looking at right
I'm
now.
not going to go that far, but
I'm probably going too far, and like I do see a path, but it's based on things that haven't happened yet. Like, man, when they make a bunch of trades or sign a bunch of free agents or win the lottery accidentally, like that will be great. But it's all stuff yet to be seen. Like, so much of this rebuild, even though we've been bad for a few years, I guess is what I'm like, is still hypothetical.
Sure. That's the point of a rebuild. Rebuilds are hypothetical until you turn the corner and then suddenly you're a great team. Like, that's just the nature of a rebuild.
It is. It just seems as if they should be further along, and because of these crazy circumstances, aren't.
Well, see, again, this is me playing devil's advocate here, but you say it seems like they should be further along. They almost made the playoffs last year. In some ways, if you're talking about being a decent team, they are further along than I think they even thought they would be.
They have told us that making the playoffs in that fashion does not matter to them.
It doesn't.
That's the thing.
It doesn't matter to them. But what does matter to them is that players that, 18 months ago we thought were this are now this. That the guys they have are better than they feared they might be. And that is progress. If, maybe I feel like this gets tossed aside because understandably there are a lot of people that just want the Flyers to be real bad so they can get top 5 picks for 3 years. But to present this as they're making no progress when they very clearly made significant on-ice progress last year seems a bit unfair.
They have made significant on-ice progress. It's just, it's unfair. But the progress they've made is nowhere near enough to get to that ultimate goal.
That is very true. And it is nowhere near enough. Correct.
To get to that ultimate goal, you need players that seem to be leaving. Like, that's the issue.
Yeah, well, Gauthier being one. But again, in return for Gauthier, you got Jamie Drysdale. And again, if you just don't believe in Jamie Drysdale, I guess that's already a loss. I'm not there. I wouldn't say I have high expectations for Jamie Drysdale. I'm just saying the jury's out. We're going to wait and see. I don't know how he's going to develop, but I'm not ready to just throw him out with the bathwater and say, well, he stinks because he was bad for 3 months when he was playing injured. Kolosov, yes. If he just never comes over, that will be a waste of a 3rd round pick, and that will be a bummer. I don't think it is a certainty he never comes over. It doesn't look like he's coming to camp. But again, this is a staring contest. He could blink. He could.
Y'all silly like the mayor.